we pull together other people around the world who also love Liberia or love higher education or love this university specifically to do some of the good things it needs.
Yeah, Ines, you want to come in?
So, you just brought me where I want to ask some of the questions necessary for the development of the university. Someone out there thinking out of the box who asks or is wanting to ask, why did you take on this task? Knowing the challenges confronting the university are just so insurmountable. Why did you take on this task?
Well, I think that I will begin with your last word, insurmountable, because I don't view these challenges as insurmountable. I view them as surmountable. And I think that for me, just by virtue of my temperament, I'm a person who loves to roll up my sleeves. I'm a person who loves a good challenge, a good puzzle. And so, having worked in and out of Liberia over the years, over the last 15 or so years, I have gotten to know some things about Liberia, and then there's still some unknowns that I have yet to learn. And putting those things together and pulling together the networks of people that I've come to get to know over the years, and knowing my love for faculty, students, etc., it just felt like all the threads could come together and I could make a contribution. I'm a person who's in this for the glory of the institution and the nation, not for the glory of myself. I'm not a person that needed a cushy presidency. I'm a person that needed a job to do, something where I had some talents to contribute, and I could keep myself busy doing something that required that hard work and challenges to figure out. So to me, this is sort of like an enjoyable task. It's something that feels like the culmination of what I've been trying to do for many years.
How do you intend to tackle these challenges you listed?
I think that with any set of challenges, you have to start by getting an understanding of the ecosystem. What is the nature of the challenges? What is the root and the source? How do the challenges interact? And then when you understand that, you have to think, what is the end goal that I'm trying to reach? And then for each one of the parts of that ecosystem or that puzzle, you have to design a causal chain. You have to design an idea of what's going to cause the outcome we want, and how do we work backward from there to make a plan and then follow that plan. It really is a very complex research and planning exercise in my mind. You have to separate out the challenges, you have to define the solution to each, and then you have to think of the steps that get you to the solution. You also, importantly, have to come up with reasonable timelines. One of the things I know about Liberia is that people often feel so frustrated that they want things immediately. And the reality is, none of these complex challenges can be solved overnight. So part of the job is managing the expectations about the timeline and saying, okay, let's come up with this solution together. Now let's understand all the steps that will get us to this solution. Now let's come up with a reasonable timeline, and then let's proceed through that timeline together. I think the idea of people collaborating to make changes is very important. I may want to lead a process, but I can't do it all by myself. Part of the job is inviting other people to participate and contribute, helping other people to get excited about the problem-solving process, and helping every person to identify what they might contribute to the solution.
Okay, Dr. Marparyan, let me remind you of something you said in your inaugural speech. You said, however, since I arrived less than 1 week ago, my sense about the urgency of certain issues has increased, and now I'm inclined to add some action items to my first 100 days to-do list.
Yes.
Can you disclose for us the items that are contained in your 100 days to-do list?
Sure.
What are they?
I mean, the very first one was just to ensure that the university reopens. I know that the hiatus that the university had been on after the last term ended has been really a frustration to everyone. So working with the different constituencies to bring people back on campus and really open the doors, even if we haven't solved all the problems yet, has been job one. And that's what I have been working on in the first 2 weeks. Another urgency has been the arrears related to the part-time faculty. That is a real sore spot on campus, and that is something that I've already put in motion solutions for that. While I don't want to speak out of turn and say exactly how that's taking place, that is already in motion. Another thing is about the bathrooms on campus. You know, the whole campus, the entire physical structure needs renovation, and there were in fact some important updates and small renovations that were made in the last few weeks to months. But the reality is there aren't enough usable bathrooms on campus right now to support the workforce or the student population. And no one can really go through their workday or their school day without access to adequate restroom resources. So I've been working with the Vice President for Administration and other actors in government to make sure that we can actually get some bathrooms reopened. Those are some of the really, would say, low-hanging fruit. But there are some other things that are a little bit of a different nature that I've also been working on. One is that I care a lot about gender equality and I care a lot about disability inclusion. So, pardon me, I've been meeting with people and making decisions that promote gender equality and disability inclusion as well.
Okay. And maybe I will start with I want you to expand more on the issue of the payroll, the
Yes.
faculties that complain about salaries. Have you
Sure.
met with them? And what are the issues? What are the main issues here?
I have met with the faculty on multiple occasions so far. I've met with the leadership of the UL Faculty Association. I've also met with I've visited the General Assembly of the ULFA as well. And on both occasions, I've expressed my feeling of sympathy with their concerns. I mean, I've been a faculty member. I know what it's like to not be, paid adequately or to run out of funding when you're a faculty member and you feel like you can't do your work, you can't come back to work, you don't have good faith. I certainly sympathize with that. And so, I prioritize that with both the VP of Finance at the university as well as the Ministry of Finance. And I said, we've got a real problem here. What can we do to accelerate things? And I was, given a process that if we follow steps A, B, and C, we're going to accelerate. Now, a lot of people think that means that the government is going to give us more money to cover the arrears. It's not. We have to take that out of the current year's budget, and that's just a reality. And that budget is already a budget that's 80 to 90% personnel only, which leaves us very little for any other university operations. But against that backdrop, it's an act of good faith to make sure that faculty are getting paid. I want to regularize faculty pay, but it's hard to regularize it if you still have arrears hanging over your head. So that is the part that I prioritized out of my commitment to regularize faculty pay.
Do we know the amount of faculty that we assist?
It's not all faculty. It's just a subset of faculty, and I don't have an exact figure at my fingertips. But what we do have is we have records of all the faculty who have and haven't been paid arrears. And so with the Vice President for Finance and Fiscal Affairs, we've been, pulling that list together, submitting it to the Ministry of Finance so that we can accelerate the payment of those arrears to the people to whom they are owed.
Before my colleague Vesely comes in, you also promised to look at the payroll and verify errors and all that. Have you done that? What are the errors?
Well, I haven't seen the payroll yet. Right now, I'm working on the arrears. Looking at the master list of everybody comes next. I want to get the arrears dealt with first, and then I want to return to the master payroll and make sure that there aren't errors. So I'm working closely with the Vice President for Finance and Fiscal Affairs, as well as the Ministry of Finance, to get that process started. Everything is one step at a time.
Okay, let me take you away from the depth of the issues. Let's come back to the general issues facing the university, Dr. Marparyan.
Sure.
There are concerns. In fact, a lot of the public believe that you landed the job on the basis of your ability to reach out to outsource funding for the university. A lot of people believe that was your advantage. Now, you spoke about it earlier, and those listening now want to know how soon, because you spoke about the budget for the university this year is already 90% down to recurring expenditures. How soon can a university see that aspect of your leadership that is capable of bringing funds into the university?
All right. Well, I can start by saying that I've already had several fundraising conversations since I've been here. some of which are very promising. Now, one of the things I know about working with funders is you never announce anything until you have it in hand. And while you're in the phase of negotiating with a funder, you don't jump the gun and go on the radio and say what they're going to do. So I won't break their confidence in that way, but I can tell you that I have already had several fundraising conversations, some of which look very positive, and I have others online for February. So I expect that within my first 100 days, I'll have some good announcements to make. One thing that I would like people to know about fundraising is that many funders for universities or for higher education in general are most likely to provide funding for various kinds of projects rather than general operating funds. And also I should mention that any kind of fundraising that relates to infrastructure and buildings is its own unique category of fundraising. And I'm not engaging in that type of fundraising right now, but over the course of this year, I expect to begin doing that. I think that there are a lot of decisions that we need to make at the university about prioritization. What kind of projects do we want to get into first? Which ones are necessary to the function of the university versus which ones are for things that we'd like to do but aren't absolutely necessary. I think what I really want to do, though, in sum, is to move the university from a place of merely surviving to a place of thriving. Right now we're just getting through, we're just eking by. That's not a good way to stay long term. Liberia has so much more to offer. The university has so much more to offer. How can we get it to be a place where there's a level of thriving, of innovation, of really showcasing Liberian genius and the Liberian intellectualism in its unique cultural context, and how can we share that with not only everyone in Liberia but with the rest of the world? That's the potential that I want to develop, and the fundraising, the overall fundraising scheme is going to help us move from merely surviving to thriving.
The university should be a place for academic excellence.
Mm-hmm.
It should be more than just a place where people go to school and go back home.
Mm-hmm.
So because currently as it is, it's just about going to school and coming back home.
Mm-hmm.
How do you intend to transform the university from being a place where people just attend classes to being a proper academic institution?
Right, that is a great question. And when I gave my inaugural address, I spoke of the 5 E's as being my platform for making that transformation at the university. The first E is education, because education is our whole purpose. Education is the reason we exist. If we educate, we're doing our job. If we don't, then we're nobody and nothing. So education is the reason we exist. The second E, however, is effectiveness. Is education effective? We all know that people can go through the motions of going to school and come out with a piece of paper that says you graduated, but did you actually learn something that you can show, with which you can make an impact, with which you are actually helping other people or moving your society along in some way? Have you gained mastery? So do we have the kind of education that allows us to showcase the effectiveness of our student learning as well as the effectiveness of our faculty, staff, all aspects of the university? But the third E is efficiency, because you can't have effectiveness if you don't have some efficiency. Most people, when they think of efficiency, they're thinking of the budgetary angle, which is, are we using our money in a way where we're doing more with less, where we're not wasting resources, where we're not, where the budget doesn't leak anywhere? That is definitely one form of efficiency that I'm very concerned about. But there are other aspects of efficiency as well. For example, is our admissions process efficient? Is our registration process efficient? Is the way that we advance faculty professional development efficient? Do our administrative systems work efficiently? Is our online presence efficient? Efficiency really affects every single system of the university. And so my goal is with efficiency is to train the lens on every single system of the university in succession and find out where can we make things more efficient. And then the fourth of the E's is excellence. You can have education, but maybe your education isn't the best, or you can come out of school with a degree, but maybe you didn't do your best. I want to encourage a culture of excellence where people are doing things to their highest and best degree, where they're not only striving for academic excellence, but they're also striving for moral excellence. They're also striving to be great citizens and great contributors to the Liberian society, to Africa, and to the world. I think that we have to create a culture of excellence within the university because people have to be committed to excellence within themselves. You can't force excellence on people. People have to want to grow towards excellence. So how do we make it inspiring? How do we invite people to become their highest and best selves? How do we invite people to show up in the best possible way? So I think that that is something that we can work on internally in the university. And then the last one, which is related to that, the last E is ethics. Because I am a firm believer that to do things well, to actually achieve excellence, you have to have a system of principles that you follow. Some people get that system of principles from their religion. Other people get it from a philosophy or a cultural background. But the fact of the matter is, if you don't have guiding principles, you aren't going to know right from wrong. You aren't going to know good from bad. You aren't going to know beneficial from something that is unbeneficial. And so I want to cultivate attention to ethical systems that we should follow to make ourselves better students, better faculty, better administrators, better staff, so that, we are always moving towards the good, always moving towards the highest and best version of ourselves. So that's my underlying philosophy.
So let me bring you back to your inaugural address,
Sure.
Which was a part of your 100-day deliverable, where you spoke about having a predictable calendar for the University of Liberia. How do you intend to execute that?
Well, that's a really great question because that's one I forgot to mention, and I appreciate you bringing it up. I think that having a predictable academic calendar really is a foundation on which the stability of the institution exists. Students need to know, when is school going to start? When is it going to end? When am I going to have my breaks? When am I going to graduate? Faculty likewise need to be able to plan their courses and the series of courses as, students are learning particular disciplines. And other schools with whom the university interacts also need to know that calendar. For example, for students who are going to graduate and move on to graduate or professional school, their calendar needs to coordinate with the places where they might be going. Because if there's too big of a gap, it creates a problem. Similarly, employers need to know. Those giving internships, these things really need to be predictable. I'm working closely with the Vice President for Academic Affairs at the university to look at the calendar and devise a predictable calendar. I don't want to say what it is yet because I know that there's a governance system, and the proposal that I'm going to offer will have to go through that approval system before it's fixed in stone. But honestly, while I was sitting in the airport on the way here, I was sitting down looking at the calendar. I was looking at all of the Liberian holidays. And I was looking at, the sort of standards for contact hours for courses in higher education. And I saw that we could easily come up with 2 16-week semesters and an 8-week, term in between, a sort of a double semester, and that it's workable, and we could do it predictably in a way that has students starting late in August, ending before the Christmas and New Year's holidays, coming back after that, finishing in May, and then having some June, July, August shorter courses. So, it's a proposal I'm going to make. The Vice President for Academic Affairs will work with me. The approval systems within the campus will have to take a look and see how it works. But it would align well with many other institutions. It would put students in a position of greater opportunity. And it would also enable us to catch up in some respects in terms of some of the time that people catch up with their coursework to graduate on time.
Let me put on you this jacket.
Okay.
There's this mentality of individuals because we're separate. And there's this uniqueness about everyone. Have you been bothered with this mentality or this thought of Liberians saying, this woman was in a competition with other Liberians, why didn't I select them? They selected her. Have you been bothered by these statements?
No, I haven't been bothered by them because I understand why people would ask the question, and it's a very legitimate and understandable question. But I think that the nationality or the Liberianness of the president is only one of many factors. I don't want to presuppose what the search committee saw in other people's files. And I also don't know why specific individuals who might have been very good candidates for the presidency may have chosen to apply or not apply. I wasn't privy to that part of the process. And so, I trust the search committee to have made the decision that they think is best. And I can understand why people, say this is the National University of Liberia, we're a sovereign nation, this is an important reflection of our culture, etc. That's a very legitimate argument. But I also understand that maybe there were some other pressing needs, and they felt like I was the best person at this time in history to fulfill that. And so all I can do is do my best to do good on that invitation to serve the institution.
I see you. What's that slogan?
Well, I think that it's very important to connect with people, and I'm actually a person who really loves people. And when I say, in my inauguration speech, I know you're referring to it, I said, I see you to the students, I said, I see you to the faculty, I said, I see you to the staff, I said, I see you to the alumni, because I really do feel a relationship and a kinship with each of those constituencies. I've been a student, I've been a faculty member, I've been an administrator, a staff person, I've been an alumna of a higher ed institution. And I've worked with all those constituencies at various points in my career, and I know the struggles. I've lived the struggles. And how can I not let people know that? It's common in academia, at almost every institution I've ever been at, where there's some kind of a feeling of distance between faculty and administration, or students and administration. It's almost like the administrators are up on some hill, separated from everybody else. But that's not really the truth. I'm not separated from everybody else. I'm part of everybody else, but I have a unique job to do. So I'm going to do that job in service of all of those constituencies, and I need them to know that we're together in it. And an additional part of ICU is, let's work together. Let's have universal participation in the initiatives to solve the problems at the University of Liberia. Let's not just look to me to do it all by myself. I will contribute what I can, but I can't do it unless everyone steps up and does their part. So I hope to make the process of stepping up be something that people feel really good about, and that when we get to the result of having solved some of the problems at the University of Liberia, that everyone will say, I had something to do with that, and that everyone will share in that good feeling.
The media see you as well.
I see the media.
Dr. Marparyan,
Yes.
There's no sugarcoating. There were mixed reactions, mixed views that arose from your appointment.
That's right.
Especially with non-Liberian argument. In fact, I interviewed Dr. Eldon, who came in your defense. But sometimes impatience can creep in from those kinds of situations. At what time, or what time can Liberians give you to transform the university? Is it a year, 2, 3? How long?
Transformation is an ongoing process. So Liberians can expect that some transformation will be going on every single day that I'm in this office. But to see the fruit, when you plant a seed in the ground, the fruit is coming, but you don't see it yet. But then when you see that sprout come out of the ground, the fruit is coming, even though you don't see it yet. And when that tree grows a trunk and starts putting flowers, fruit is coming, but you haven't seen it yet. Each one of those things is a transformation. It's a step towards the fruit that you're going to pick and eat. But if you don't go through all those other steps, you're never going to get the fruit. So everyone has to understand, transformation is a process, and it's easier to believe it's coming when you know the steps. And one of the things I'm committed to doing is letting people know the steps. If this is the fruit we want, these are the steps we have to go through to get there. Let's watch ourselves go through the steps, and let's all do the work.
Okay, so let's know the steps for infrastructural development in the first place, and then we'll come to the academic itself.
Right.
Infrastructural development steps. What are they?
Well, for starters, we have to make the campus usable, and that's where the bathrooms comes in. That's why that's the entry step, because people have been using the buildings at the University of Liberia in their current condition for a long time. It's been intolerable, and it's been very unsightly and challenging. But that's something that will change over time. We have to make some decisions. For example, I've been asking people in my own informal poll, if you had your choice, would you rather fix up the buildings we have, or would you rather build new buildings and get rid of the old buildings? That's a type of choice that a university has to make. People give me their different opinions about it. Some people say, oh, it would be great to build new buildings. Other people say, no, we love these buildings. We just want to fix them up. And so, it starts with the process of decision making about what our priorities are going to be. And then thinking about buildings that are fit for purpose. One of the issues of any old campus building is often it's not set up for technology, modern technology. So you have to think with all the buildings, what needs to be done to make this building accommodate modern technology? But you can't just accommodate the modern technology of today. You have to think, okay, how is technology going to change over the next little while? And how can you kind of prepare for what might be next with technology? Otherwise, you'll just have to do the building over again. So, you have to ask yourself these kind of series of questions. And then you have to ask yourself, are buildings being used for what they were built for? One example would be classrooms. What number of people was this classroom built for? Was it built for 25 students and now we're putting 50 students there? If that is the case, then we either need to build more classrooms or have fewer students. Because if you put too many people in a building, not only does it stress the building, but it impedes the learning. So it's a series of questions through, and I'm in the process of developing those questions now. Now, granted, once you get the answers to the questions, you have to have that vision for the building you want. It could be a completely renovated, older building. It could be a brand new building, but you've got to have the vision, and then you've got to have the architectural plan, and you've got to have the budget for that building, and then you've got to go out and fundraise for that budget.
But based on the opinions that you're sampling, what are the most popular? Are people suggesting that we have new buildings?
Both. I've gotten people who said both.
What are you thinking about? What are you thinking about yourself? What is your thoughts?
Well, that's hard to say because I want to be very respectful of the history of the University of Liberia. I think there are some new buildings that are needed, but I also understand that every college campus has certain key historical icons in its architecture that must be preserved. And I rely on people in Liberia to tell me which of those buildings are really the key historical icons that must be preserved and renovated rather than moved. I also know that at the Fendel campus, there is a larger land development plan. The Fendel campus has a lot of acreage. And there's a vision for a university city in the Fendel area. That's a long-term plan. It's a public-private partnership. It's not just the university building more classrooms, but it's other kinds of businesses and buildings and organizations that support that very wider life at the university that you were talking about. If you go to other, universities, for example, let's say you go to Harvard, which is in the Boston area where I'm coming from. The campus itself, the Harvard's own buildings are spread out all over Cambridge, but in between them are all kind of businesses and other organizations so that people have a real feeling of a college community there. Fendel should feel like that. At some point, Fendel should feel like a college or university community. So we need to think carefully. There is a plan for that development, but parts of the plan still have room to be developed with more specificity. So I'm excited about that. And I think every Liberian should be excited about that because even many other African countries have university cities and have other kinds of developments around their universities that support campus life and the experience of students, faculty, staff, and administrators.
So we've known the steps toward infrastructure development. Let's know what are the steps to improving learning at the university.
There are several factors to that. One is I think it's really important to do a credentials audit at the University of Liberia to make sure that everyone is in the right field and has the right credentials for the field that they are teaching. Pardon me. Additionally, we need to look at the curricular areas and find out whether they are up to the best practices in their field. So, for example, I've recently been working on a USAID program called Higher Education for Conservation that's been working with the Forestry Department as well as Environmental Science to look at their curriculum to see if they have the best practices in coursework for the conservation of Liberia's extensive rainforests. That's a really important resource, not just for Liberia, but for West Africa and the world. And people need to be well educated to support the conservation and the biodiversity preservation of that rainforest. And so in the process of doing that, we've been able to go to some extent course by course and look at what's being offered and then to compare that with coursework from other institutions around the world and develop some improvements for those courses to sort of take them to the next level of excellence for the students at the University of Liberia. So other departments may need to go through a similar process to compare the curriculum that they're currently offering with what is cutting edge in their field. So that's another level. And the third thing comes to making sure that the curricula offered at the University of Liberia are supportive of the national development plans. Of course, those plans change from time to time. We just got a new one last week. But we want to look carefully to make sure that particularly the nation's flagship university is closely aligned with the development needs of the nation and make sure that the strongest departments and the leading departments are the ones that directly contribute expertise and experts to the national development needs.
Have you done a full assessment of all of the different structures of the university, the full campuses, the administration, the student pathways, everything? Have you done a full assessment? And what have been your impressions?
I haven't. I've been here just under 2 weeks, so I haven't done a full assessment yet, but I have plans to do that and to do it fairly soon. But I want to do it very carefully. You know, I'm a social scientist, and I'm very careful about how we develop surveys. I'm very careful about, how we look at the different parts of the university in a very systematic fashion. And so right now I'm in a stage where I'm talking to people who are the vice presidents, the deans, the, faculty chairs, etc. I'm in a process of learning about each of the sectors of the university from the people who run them. But a following stage from that will be to do a variety of kinds of surveys and focus groups to get more information from the broader population of people at the university. I think it's very important to take action on a data-driven basis, and I did emphasize that in my inauguration speech, because it's easy to think but if you have data, you can really back it up and be more sure and make sound decisions. So I'm in the process of honestly evaluating every single aspect of the university for the purpose of developing a new strategic plan that we can launch later this year that will carry us through about 4 years' time.
Okay, I'm sure you may have seen the academic plan for the university for the last maybe couple of years. Mm-hmm. I know you've only spent a little over 2 weeks in the job. But are you satisfied with how the university have had their academic plan done over the last couple of years? Is there something you want to change? Do you have a vision towards it?
I think that every president comes in and develops their own strategic plan. That's a normal process. You want to build on what your predecessors did, but you also want to add something new. I think that in terms of what I said with the 5 E's, that I think there is room for growth. And that the academic plan did make some strides. For example, we have introduced the 2 new doctoral programs, but we need to grow into those doctoral programs. They've been announced, they've been established, but there's still growth that needs to happen. There are other kinds of programs that we might be able to introduce, and there are also programs that we may need to take a look at and see if they're really functioning viably. So, I would not want to say that any predecessor's plan was good or bad, but simply that I wish to build on it and to go in new directions that build on the strengths that I'm able to bring and the observations that I make about campus. I can say that I think that it's really important that we strengthen the first year experience at the University of Liberia. I think that students come in with very diverse levels of academic preparation, and because of that, they enter into their more advanced coursework in different levels of competence. I would love to see us have some things during the first year that help get everybody to a more common level of competence going into their more advanced courses. And that's something that I've been giving a lot of thought to on the academic curriculum side.
Have you done an evaluation of student-to-faculty ratio? Are there fewer faculty compared to the number of students, the university overcrowded, what student population of you in your mind?
Class sizes are very big. There are certain types of classes for which a large number of students is okay, but there are a lot of types of classes that really require smaller numbers for effectiveness. Having just walked around even the Capitol Hill campus at certain parts of Federal and seen how many desks are in a room, I know that there are some very large classes. But I think that there has to be a balance at any university between large, sometimes like let's say intro classes that can be large where people are just listening to lectures versus smaller classes where people really have to be able to discuss and have a more involved relationship with the professor. If you have too many students, you can't do that. You can't have those conversations. So I am going to look closely at the teacher-student ratio, and also just look at the real square footage of classroom space at the university. I don't want people to feel like they're jammed like, sardines into a classroom. That's not effective for learning.
So you're closely getting used to all of the Liberian parlance, because I hear you say sardine, partner, sardine in the classroom.
Yeah.
So let me take you back to your previous quest to have the university at this upgrade level as compared to where you've come from. Owing to the fact that one of the major tools used to grade a university is research, and the University of Liberia is far from that. How do you intend to navigate your way through this in making the University of Liberia better?
That is a really great question, and I'm glad you asked it, because one of the first things that the university needs to do to strengthen the climate for research is to build up the research and grants administrative infrastructure. There are certain things that research grantors need to see in place at a university before they can make a research grant. So, for example, they need to have very good grant accounting departments, and they need to have officers who can look at the compliance to the regulations of the grant and make sure it's being followed. You also need people whose job it is to be on the lookout for research grants and help inform prospective researchers that grants are available that they could apply for. You need people who are able to assist with the grant writing process. And then faculty need training in grant writing so that they're able to get the funds for the research. It's great for a university to have some research funds internally, particularly for pilot projects in research. But bigger research projects typically require external funding. One of the discoveries I made when I was working on the higher education for conservation grant proposal with a bunch of collaborators both in Liberia and the United States. And one of the things that we discovered is that to receive a large grant from the United States government, there's a particular kind of number called a SAMS number that an institution needs to have to even be able to register to receive the grant. And the University of Liberia doesn't even have such a number. So the simple fact of going to apply for that number and meeting the requirements that are there to get that number would be an initial step. So there's those kinds of impediments to building a research culture. But there are other impediments as well. And I've known about these long before I even came to Liberia, because I remember my very first trip to Africa, which was in Uganda in the year 2000, I met with a number of faculty from Marparyan University, and they told me how hard it was to be able to publish in journals around the world. So the issue of having access to journals where you can publish your work is another thing that we need to work on. Part of that comes from research collaborations, but part of it involves really being able to have more access to those journals, their editorial boards, and even the funding that's needed, because some journals require a fee to be submitted when they're publishing the work, particularly open access journals. So I have a lot of ideas about increasing the research climate, making it easier for those faculty at the University of Liberia who want to do research to do so. But a big part of that is also making sure that more faculty have PhDs. PhD is really the research degree. With many research grants, if you don't have a terminal degree, you can't get the grant. The grant it's a requirement of getting a research grant that you have a terminal degree, which is a PhD or an equivalent degree. So if you have a master's degree, then how can I help you go get a PhD? I really want to develop a program over time where we place more of the master's level faculty at the university in PhD programs as long as they commit to coming back to the University of Liberia to serve as faculty. Then we'll also increase the research culture because we'll have more people with terminal degrees.
So how do you intend to do the research collaboration?
Research collaborations come when people form relationships with people in their field. So attending conferences, reaching out to researchers who work on similar problems, putting in grants together, those kind of things build up the research collaborations. So, creating an enabling environment for faculty to do that is where that would all begin.
Okay, if you just joined us, you're listening to the Super Morning Show on ELBC Radio 99.9 and other frequencies across the country. And we also relay on other radio stations, including Prime FM 105.5, Lux FM is online, OK FM 99.5, Truth FM 96.1. We're also live on 99.9 ELBC and LNTV Liberia live. And our guest this morning is Dr. Layli Marparyan, the president of the University of Liberia. My name is Vafle Kamara, and I'm here along with my colleagues, Vesely Sumo from Prime FM and Madam Ines Reeves Soko from Lux FM. We are taking a short break to be back.
Okay. Naraka, I've got one more hour.
Yeah.
Walk us through the predictable period for this hour. At what point do we open the line?